Hello again guys, today I'm going to show you my step-by-step process of how I make my survival bows and arrows. I'm going to be making my own personal kit that I'm going to be using for hunting, and I'm going to be using natural materials for this, but I will give you options using salvaged and scrap materials that you might find or have on you in a survival situation along the whole process as well. Now when it comes to your bow material, there's dozens of species of tree that you can use. Basically any hardwood tree will make a bow. Obviously there's some better than others. Personally, I've only made bows from yew, ash, hickory, maple, oak and hazel, yew being my favourite. But all these timbers plus many more will make great bows and they all hit hard. When it comes to finding and selecting a bow stave, a branch, limb, sapling in our case, we're looking for a straight as knot-free, undamaged piece of wood that we can find. Traditionally, bows are made from a stave that's been cut and seasoned, which just means it's been cut and left to dry for 5 to 7 months. This is a survival bow. We haven't got 5 to 7 months, we'll starve to death in that time. So we're going to be making our bow from green, live, unseasoned wood straight from the tree. There's ways that we can dry it out, which will produce a little bit more power, and I'll get to that later. I moved from the UK to Bulgaria, and I'm living in a coniferous forest, so I'm really limited to what hardwood trees I can choose from. I'm a bit of a tree geek, and even I don't recognise some of the hardwood trees in this forest, but I do recognise this. It's hazel. I made my first hazel bow only last week. It turned out pretty well, so I'm going to use hazel for my demonstration today. I've got my stave of wood. Mine's pretty straight, but if yours has got a natural curve to it, I suggest just following that curve for the shape of the bow. The piece I've selected is about head height, and it's about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. The thicker the piece just means the more material I'll have to remove from it. Okay guys, don't worry, this is not the finished bow, okay, it's just for an example. This side of the bow is what's called the back of the bow. This is the side that's going to be facing your target. The inside is called the belly of the bow. You only want to remove material off the belly side of the bow, the belly and the actual sides of the bow. You don't want to remove any material off the back of the bow. Any material or damage caused to the back of the bow could cause the bow to snap. It works as well. Before I start the bow, let's collect some arrow shafts. Just like the bow, I'm going to use hazel. Debarking the shafts. Plenty of things that you can use for arrow shafts. Ash saplings are quite good, they tend to grow quite straight. We can use reeds, or you can just get a normal branch off a tree, straight as you can, and whill it down even straighter. I like to bind my shafts to dry. What tends to happen is if one's bending out slightly, the other 3 will bend it back in. They'll still need some work, but we can straighten them out over a fire. Just means they dry a little bit better this way. Okay, back to the stave. What I've done, I've marked the centre line. This is where your arrow is going to be shooting from, and I've put a centre line straight down the middle of the stave as well, and this is where basically your bowstring is going to be going along. Now I put this on for a reference. Sometimes when you take material off one side of the limbs, on one limb, as you start taking material off the other side and you're hacking away, the bow stave can start moving round, and what this line will do is it'll just give you a bit of a reference, so you know you're taking material off exactly the same spots on each side of the limbs. Now I'm going to start removing the thick of the material off each side of the bow and just get the basic shape. Just remember not to damage the back of the bow. Now I've got the rough shape of the bow cut out, it's coming along, it's starting to look bow shape-ish. So I'm going to give my hands a bit of a rest and crack on with the arrows. Now I want my shafts at about 28 inches. I've not got a measuring tape on me, so a good way to measure them right. Then you've got a bow in your hand, draw it back to your anchor point, pinch it about 1 inch or 2 ahead, and that's going to be the length of my shafts. The notch for the string and needs to be wide enough to accommodate the string itself. For most of my fletchings I'm using pheasant feathers that I harvested from birds last season. Feathers are pretty easy to find on the forest floor, or you could make a simple bird trap and harvest a load at once. A few other options is to make them out of paper or card, or duct tape works well too. Binding options for fletchings and arrow tips are endless. Cotton string, threads from your own clothing, inner strands of paracord, individual strands of jute twine, fishing line, bramble fibres, or even your own hair. I use sinew for most of my arrows, which is deer tendons, but I'm running out. So I'm going to show you a way to produce an unlimited amount of natural binding material. The common nettle grows all over the world and is very easy to identify. You've all probably been stung by them in the past. And the stems make great binding material and cordage. You want to crush down the entire length of the stem. And open up the stem flat. Fold the stem in half. Using your thumb and your fingers, just start to remove the outer bark. These are the fibres. blessed with is really strong fibres. You can bind your fletchings and arrow tips while the fibres are still wet. They will shrink, but they'll become a lot tighter and they'll keep the strength. When you add the fletchings to the shaft, you don't want them straight, you want to angle them slightly. Just like when a bullet leaves the barrel of a rifle, the rotation will cause the arrow to spin, and this will stabilise the arrow as it flies through the air. When it comes to the arrow tips, there's numerous materials that you could use, both natural and man-made. I'm putting my kit to regular use, so I've used scrap metal for mine, bent and filed into shape. But you could use an old can, opened up, folded repeatedly and hammered with a rock. Stone, flint, glass, bone, or even just fire-hardened wood would do the trick. You don't have to glue your tips on, but I do recommend it, so I'll quickly take you through the process of making pine pitch glue. Resin's super easy to find. Pine and spruce trees ooze this stuff all over. It's mainly damaged areas like you see here, where a limb of the tree is broken off close to the trunk. It doesn't take long to collect a good quantity of it. The next ingredient to the glue is hardwood wood ash, which is burnt wood from a hardwood tree. You just grind it down. It's optional to put a bit of rabbit shite in it. Goat works as well, but this doesn't really add that much strength to the glue. I've got my resin on heat and it's starting to liquefy. If you haven't got an old can, you can just put it on a flat rock, put it on the coals and it'll start to melt on that. It's just a bit easier to handle when it's in a can. There's no exact recipe. Some say 2 parts resin, 1 part charcoal, but for me it's just about mixing it until you get the right consistency. Once you've got that thick tar-like paste, as it starts to cool, you can start rolling it onto the stick. Once your glue's dry, a good way to test if it's any good, hit it on a rock and it doesn't shatter, then you've done a good job. You only want to make the notches for the bow tips big enough to accommodate the string's thickness and angle them down towards the handle. I've made a squirrel rawhide bowstring for my bow, but just while I check my tiller, I'm going to string it with a bit of paracord. I'm happy with the till of my bow now, which takes us to the bowstring itself. Like I said, I'm using a squirrel rawhide bowstring for mine, but you can use all sorts of materials for yours. In an ideal world, you'd have a Dacron string like this, but paracord, bank line, bootlaces, sinew, strips of fabric, or there's plenty of other ways to make a natural string from things like sapling bark or other plant fibres. If you'd like to find out and see the step-by-step process on how I make my squirrel rawhide bowstrings, please check out the link below or visit my channel and find other tutorial, hunting, bushcraft and wild camping adventure videos. I want to make a hunting video using my own handmade bow, arrows and bowstring, so for the first few shots of this bow I'm going to be stringing it with a bit of paracord just in case I damage my string. The rawhide string has a loop top and bottom, so it's easy to connect to my bow, so it will give me the opportunity to show you how I connect a piece of paracord to my bow. When you're stringing your bow with cordage, I'm using paracord here, you can tie any type of knot on the end. You can put a bow line or even just a granny knot as long as it's secure, and then on the other end I've just put a hoop. Okay, when it comes to stringing your bow, the bow over your foot, step into the bow, use your thigh to support the handle. I'm going to pull the bow in, pop the hoop up. Okay guys, I don't know if you can see that, but this limb is curving a little bit more than this limb. I can see it here, it's going flat and then flat again. So I'm just going to take a little bit more material off in this area. And that should be good. Okay, that's a little bit better. Still needs a little bit more material off here, another scraping, and I think we're good. A good way to make sure you've got the correct brace height, which is the distance between the bow and the string, just pop your fist on the bow, pop your thumb up, and that's perfect. Now sometimes when I make a survival bow I want to produce a bit more power from it. Say it's got a 50-pound draw, by drying out the limbs over the fire I could knock it up to about a 60-pound draw. This bow's a lot more powerful than I expected. I haven't got my weigher on me, but I estimate it between about 70 and 80 pound. That's more than enough power to kill anything on the planet. And anything more than that I'll just struggle to draw it back, and there's no point having a bow that's more powerful than yourself. Your bow will naturally dry by itself, and the chances are I'll have to remove a little bit more material from the limbs to reduce the power in this bow. If you did want to dry out your bow quick time, just prop each limb over the fire for 10 to 15 minutes. You don't want the flames licking up your bow. Have it at a distance where you can hold your hand up there without being burned, but it'll still be getting a lot of heat. That's my squirrel rawhide bowstring strung up. I've had to bind the hoops on each end a little bit, as I'd made the hoops slightly too big for this bow, but that's what you get when you make the string before the bow. But other than that, it fits perfect. Okay guys, that's shooting hard and straight. I'm pretty happy with it. As a great Fred Bear once said, don't look for deer, look for movement, remember, it's what they're looking for too. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you next time.